something that is astounding itself into being is this project that has begun called the Keepsake Chronicles. So I want to invite to the stage Alex Kornhuber, who is a Peruvian photographer, Kate Irving, who is a professor of clinical nursing at the School of Nursing, Psychotherapy and Community Health in Dublin City University, and Claire Fowley. Hello. Cathy, sorry. I started Monday without being able to read it, and I didn't get any better. Writer and researcher. And I'm going to hand over to them to explain the Keepsake Chronicles.
Okay. Good. Hi, everyone. So I'm Kate, this is Cathy and Alex, and we are three storytellers. We love telling stories. And well, first of all, I would like to say thank you to Dominic for this really kind invitation and the space here to talk about our project, which we're all three of us very passionate about. So we were curious to see if people who had dementia at a part in their journey could, at a sort of early stage of their journey, could they have fun, practice their narrative identity, and make a beautiful book that they would be really proud of and that they would want to show people and that they would look at again and again. So we found some people with newly-ish diagnosed dementia, and we found them through a hospital clinic in Dublin and through a community centre in Mayo. And we got them together in a group and we asked them to tell their stories. So the ethos was that we believe that narrative identity, as we practice it in storytelling, is as important for people with dementia as it is for us or any of us. And we define and make meaning and construct ourselves through the stories that we tell. And conversely, social withdrawal is often noted as both a risk factor for and a symptom of progressing dementia. The stories themselves are probably not as relevant as what they denote, how they connect us with other people, with other stories, with other objects, and how each story differentiates us as an individual. And this could be thought of as narrative citizenship if we were being posh, but we just like to think of it as having great fun. So what we did, and I guess kind of neatly following on from Sue, is we were really interested in objects. Why objects? Well, because people keep objects, and the material world is a symbolic extension of the self. And also with I've done a lot of life story work with people with dementia where we ask them to tell us their life story, but it's not all that democratic. Whereas if we ask somebody to bring an object, first of all, the object scaffolds memory. So it helps the person to tell their story because they have a physical object in their hand, which often sparks words that really are difficult to find. For like me now, I could do with an object. Often sparks the narrative. So it scaffolds cognitive processes to some extent. And also objects are culturally linked. And what we found were real differences culturally between genders. So the stories were quite gendered. And they also were major differences between rural Ireland and city Ireland. So we had a plan. We asked people to come, bring an object, and tell us about their object. But mostly, Cathy and I have done a lot of this work before, and Alex has done a lot of work with people with dementia before, so we were all very real about this, and we knew we just had to be flexible with whatever came in the room. So, of course, we were worried. What if nobody brings an object? What if people bring their relatives and the relative keeps speaking over? What if, what if? And of course, all of that happened, and we just dealt with whatever came in the room at the time. And hopefully we'll be able to explain to you about how that happened. There are loads of ethical issues when you do this kind of work with people with dementia. And of course, we don't have time to talk about them all, but we thought that one that probably puts most people off from doing this kind of work, and if there are other poets or photographers or artists in the room who think that this might be interesting work, I guess what we're trying to do, and when we write a small paper based on this project. We're trying to encourage other artists to get involved with this kind of work because we're passionate about people with dementia being able to chronicle their lives in a way that they can access. Perhaps when the future is less certain for them, or it's certainly very likely that at some point they won't be able to tell those stories, that we would really like for people to be able to capture them and make a piece of art. So perhaps this is different for other countries. I'm aware there's an international audience here, but in Ireland we have the Assisted Decision-Making Capacity Act of 2015, which makes provision in law for autonomous decision-making and supports shared decision-making, so no longer proxy decision-making, so that somebody, once they're deemed as not having capacity to make a decision, they're excluded from decision-making. What is now legally mandated in Ireland is that they have to have a shared decision-making process with a decision assister. So this is me here, and Albert was asking me, I said, so Albert, are you happy? Albert's the man in the black coat in the middle. Are you happy to go ahead? And he said, I'm not really sure what I'm doing here. And I said, oh, right, okay, let me explain. So I explained to him. And then, because at that point I was a little bit unsure about whether he was willing to go ahead, I said, could you explain to me what I just said to you? And he said, well, we're just telling stories, aren't we? And I said, yes. And are you happy to go ahead? And he said, yeah, sure, I love telling stories. So I think that when we think about consent, we think it has to be really kind of complex, but it was a very simple process for us where we clarified. And also, it's not like a one-off consent and that's it, we get them to sign. This is a process that we will complete when the work is complete, and we go back to the people, the participants, with the artwork and show them the poetry and show them the pictures and let them agree that that is the final thing that they want to be in the final product. So we continually monitored, Cathy and I. Alex was busy taking photographs, but we continually monitored whether people seemed to want to be there, and checked in with that as a regular part of the group. Okay. And the other thing that I thought might be interesting to know about are the techniques that Cathy and I use to keep people talking, because sometimes when you have word finding difficulties, it's difficult to keep going. So some of the techniques that we use to help scaffold the person's voice, well, the most important one was taking an intentional stance. And that means that assuming that the person with dementia is trying to communicate something meaningful in spite of word finding or recall problems. And that in turn leads to the idea that a person's inability to speak coherently doesn't mean a lack of some coherent thoughts or ideas. In the same way, if a speaker of a foreign language was struggling to communicate their needs, one wouldn't assume that they didn't have something coherent to say. That's taking an intentional stance with people with dementia that we tried in every way to understand, using empathic listening, which shows that we're willing to work with the person to try and figure out the message, that you view the speaker as being worthy of your time and effort, and that you're not dismissing them as confused. And the other thing was indirect repair. So indirect repair is where you don't correct somebody who makes a mistake, but you genuinely say, I'm not really sure what it is that you're trying to say. Is it this? And then they can say, no, it's not quite that. It's something like it, but this. And then you carry on. So it's something of a conversational dance that you get in together, where the person tells you a little bit and then you fill in something and then they fill in something. A dance like an old-fashioned ballroom dance, not like one of these TikTok things that people do these days. My kids. And then finally, I guess what we did was we would ask very open-ended, opinion-based questions, not fact-based, because fact-based questions with dementia, the first thing that people lose are the nouns. And that's very difficult if you say, well, when did that happen? Where were you? Who was there? Of course, Cathy and I knew well not to stay quite clear of those kinds of questions. Whereas questions like, well, how does that make you feel? How do you think they felt? They're questions that can be answered long into the dementia process when a lot of nouns have been lost to the person. And I'm going to hand over to Cathy now Already, yeah. I stuck to time, see? I'm a pro. To talk to you about I was there, I'm a nurse by background. I was there for just process stuff. I got the people together and I, made sure we did the ethics, and that was my role. And these two are really the creative geniuses that I got to work with. It was my pleasure to work with both of them. And all the photos that you see, Alex's photographs. Cathy's going to show you the poetry that we made of people's stories and the photographs that go with the poetry. Over to you, Cathy.
Okay. Where are we? Yes. That was our first meeting, the very first meeting where we went in hoping everything was going to work out. We knew it always kind of works out in the end, but it started perfectly. Marty brought a clarinet. So we admired the clarinet, beautiful object in a beautiful box. And then we heard the story of the clarinet and the story of Marty, who used to play in a band. He told us about show bands, about dances, about meeting his wife, but also and we all sang. It was wonderful. As you can imagine, it was a real gift, and this really got us started for our first meeting, and really for the rest of our project as it goes along. Yeah. So, as part of what we do, because we are lucky to have a great photographer with us, we go and look at the place as well as the object. And for Marty, the place was Rahins National School. Somebody knows it. As it used to be. As you see now, it has been abandoned, unfortunately. But this is where Marty met his wife. As he was playing with the Scarlet Seven, wasn't it? And this is where he met his wife. So we went up and down the wilds of Mayo. Alex got us to climb over walls and all sorts of things, and we got talking to neighbours about the story of the school, etc. And this is part of Marty's story. Yeah. Afterwards, very often we made a visit to the person's home to sort of clarify some things, to continue a little bit on the storytelling. And this here, we went to Swinford after Rahins. We went to Swinford to see Seamus and his daughter. Seamus hadn't brought an object when we met. We all met in Ballantyne in Mayo. But when we went to visit him, and from his story the first time, and from his story when we went to visit him in his pub, it became very clear that his object was the River Moy. And in his stories, he repeatedly came back to an expression of something that really we all share, about the loss of nature. And he, over and over, he said, it's so sad. And his sadness obviously came from his love of the rivers since he was a child. So we went to see the River Moy, and Alex took that beautiful picture. And I think we'll tell you a little bit of what that object, that thing that was given to us by Seamus meant to us as sort of artists. So, Alex.
Of course, Seamus couldn't bring his object to the room because the object was a river. So we went to it, and it was very cold that day, wasn't it?
was very cool.
We spent a lot of time taking pictures, and this was the last picture I took just before leaving. And to me, this picture, well, I was trying to capture sort of the ephemeral nature of memory. The way the rivers rushing past in a blur, just as memories lose their clarity with the passage of time. And this is juxtaposed with the solidity of the bridge, which also it's weathered through the years, but it is still solid.
So, as part of our process, we stayed long into the night after the meetings, discussing all those things, and we were looking at that photograph. And I was saying that for me, the river also symbolizes language, and how language changes, and how repetition of words in the conversation with people, that repetition of words matches the structure of poetry, really, and how also juxtaposition of words that are sort of unexpected sometimes can also bring images and metaphors that really are poetry in the wild. So that was, and I think we're going to hear.
Today. The salmon are nearly gone extinct. It's so sad.
And is it because of pollution that they've
Well,
gone?
I'd say probably the biggest the knitting at sea, because it's no longer a knit, it's a vacuum now. You know, way out in the Atlantic, and it's so sad.
So,
You look at the River Moy today, the salmon are nearly gone extinct. It's so sad.
And is it
so John Killick, who is the poet who's worked most with people with dementia and who's written some amazing books, he says about a lady, he says she's the speaker of the poem that I wrote. And this is really very much how we approached working with the people who were telling us their story. They were the speakers of the words, and we wrote the poems. So this is Seamus's poem. It's called There All Our Lives. If you look to the River Moy today, the salmon have nearly gone extinct. It's so sad. There's very little there now. And if you catch one, you throw it back. But it's so sad. It's so sad when I look at all that. You take Lochmask, the Corrib, the River Moy. It's so sad to see them dying. No grouse in the bogs. No bird like you always saw. The lark, it's gone now. The curlew, it's so sad. Now the hatches aren't in it. Now the birds are gone. It was there all our lives. It's so sad to see the thing dying in front of us now. It wasn't all sad, though. We had a lot of laughs, and this is a beautiful photograph of a photograph from Sheila, who lives near Claremorris. And she is a lady who told us about her 10 years working in America. She left the farm, but she wasn't one for the farm work. No, she wasn't for the farm work. And she went to America, spent 10 years there, and she came back. She came back then, got married to the love of her life. And this was really the main message. Can we play her?
But I had a great husband. And I say he was a great husband. He still is a great husband. I love him to pieces. He's my whole life. I don't know where I'd be without him.
So this is the poem that she spoke and I wrote. And it's called Love. That's the man in my dreams, a good picture of us. This is my first husband, my one and only. I knew him before I went to America. I met him in the dance hall or in the bog. He was cutting turf down the fields there. There was something brewing. I went to America for 10 years and he came to America. I didn't think he would, but he did. I thought there's more to it than meets the eye. He stayed 3 weeks. He said he would wait for me, and that was that. I said, you might meet another queer one when you go home. But he didn't. No, he didn't. The best present he gave me was the wedding band and the engagement ring. He said, you like that one, you have that one. I had a great husband. And when I say he's a great husband, he's still a great husband. I love him to pieces. He's my whole life. I don't know where I'd be without him. I am happy, you know. Like when I say that, I still love him to pieces. Since the day I met him, no regrets.
I'm like the inverted commas around the good bits. We'd love to discuss this project more. This is a fledgling, as Dominic referred to, this is a real fledgling, low budget, i.e. no budget project that we did because we love it, because Alex loves taking pictures and Cathy loves writing poems, and I just really nosy and I love stories. No, I care. So if there are people who feel like that they would like to get involved, we'd love to hear from you. We're open to future collaborations on storytelling and dementia, and we hope to complete the work by at least getting to the other 2 provinces of Ireland that we haven't got to yet. And in the fullness of time, we'd really like to start a website called Keepsake Chronicles, and give people a place and a space to store and share their stories with the world. And wouldn't it be cool if we had Keepsake Chronicles from African countries and from India and from, you know, well, we were an international bunch, maybe from Peru or maybe from England or maybe from France. We don't know. It could be coming from anywhere. So all over the world one day, who knows? You heard it here first. And I'd just like to leave the last word to a gentleman who came. One of the concerns we had is, what if everybody comes and nobody wants to tell their story? And of course, one person did come and didn't want to speak. And of course, that was fine. But as he was leaving, he just said to Cathy and I, that was so much fun. Are you coming back next week? So even people who didn't come and tell their stories wanted to come and listen more to some more stories. And we're just really passionate that storytelling is people. It's a right. It's a human right. And we want to make it more for people with dementia as well. Thank you very much.
Yeah.